Hi everyone, it's me, New York vocalist Benita Charles, for another episode of Singing Tips. I'm excited because this is the last Singing Tips in this series, which is your original music. So it's all the tips that we've had before now in this section has all been about your original music, like writing your music, copywriting your music, performing your own music. So hi, I see I have 4 people, 5, hello. Happy Saturday. Thanks for joining me for a singing tip. I was just saying that I'm really excited because this is the last singing tips in this series. Hello. Oh, hi, Azania. Hello, darling. How are you? So glad you caught me live. I wanted to just say you were so beautiful. Your song for the march in Geneva, it was so beautiful, and the way you touched that crowd. This is what we are talking about in singing tips in terms of connecting with the audience, in terms of being prepared. You had all your songs together, your voice sounded great, and you connected with the audience, you got the audience involved, and that's exactly what I stress in singing tips. So if you are not following Azania Noah, she is a perfect example of what we're talking about in singing tips. Azania is a beautiful singer. She lives in Geneva. She has a wonderful following. She gives her own singing tips, performance tips. So you can check her out. Azania, if you would put some emojis so people can click on your name so they can follow you. She is a wonderful example of what we're, the beginner singers, what we're all striving for is professional. And she gives great tips also. So just connect with her. She has a community called the Singer Elite Community, and it's a community of singers of all different stages, and it's collective, and they get together, they encourage each other, they perform, they support each other, and Azania posts all of her tips in that community. So if you're interested, please connect with Azania. So thanks so much for joining, and hello David, how are you? Joseph Smith, thanks so much for joining. So, I see thank you guys, Danny, wow. So yeah, I have a lot of new people here, so just want to give you a little bit of background of what I'm doing. I'm Benita Charles, I live in New York City, I'm a vocalist, and I give singing tips to beginner singers to help them become professional. I had a lot of singers asking me like what to do. They didn't know where to start. So I am taking them from ground zero, knowing nothing, don't know what to do, to becoming professional. So far, we've had the section on your talent. That's where you start. That's the foundation. You can't do anything if you can't sing right. So all the tips in that section has been about getting the voice together. Then we moved on to live performance. So once they got their voice together, I encouraged them to sing in front of an audience. So all of the tips in that section was all about performing. Now we are in the section of original music. So all of the tips in this section has been about your original music. And this actually is the last tip of that section. We are on tip number 30. Can you believe it? Hello, Shanti. I think that's what Shanti Monique Wilford. Thanks so much for joining. So just to give you a little bit of background of singing tips, the way it's designed is I was inspired by this movie called Get On Up. Every week I am going to promote this movie. It's an old movie now. It came out in 2014, but it was the story of James Brown. And in that movie, he talked about show business. There's a show part and there's a business part. And I thought, wow, you know what? That's really great, because all these years I focused on the show part and I never really thought about the business part, but that's the part where you make the money. So the way I design the singing tips is I have a show part and I have a business part. Now, we are almost out of the show part. We've had the talent, live performance, your original music. We're getting ready to go into image. Once we get out of the image section, we're going to be going into the business section. So, I mean, we've been plugging along since last April is when I started singing tips. So we are almost there. So this is the last tip of your original music. Now, so anyway, let me tell you about last week. So last week we talked about working with a producer. So you're in the studio. We talked about finding the right producer. We talked about, having your song ready so that when you work with that producer, the song is there. And we also talked about elements of a good producer, like what would a good producer do. So if you're interested in that tip, click on my bio on Instagram, BCM Sings, or you can look on my feed here in Facebook. Just go down to last week. It's there. But it's all about working with a producer. So from that step, we are now at releasing your music. So, we talked about writing the song. We talked about copywriting your song. We talked about collaborating. So last week we talked about working with a producer. And now you're ready to release. You're ready to get that song out there. So this step is all about going in the studio and actually recording that song and finishing it. So this tip is called Release Your Music. This is tip number 30 in the original music section. This is the last tip of this section. Now we are going to have a recap show. Oh, and by the way, I'd like to mention Azania was a special guest on one of my singing tip shows. So we will, during the recap, I will have a special show where we talk about Azania and the value that she gave, because she talked about her songwriting process. But so I just wanted to mention that. So anyway, let's get on with it. So you got your song written, got to copyright it. Remember, this is very important. You got your producer, and now you're in the studio. Oh, by the way, I am downtown at the Brookfield Center again. They have the light shows extended through the end of the month, or I think the 29th. So let me just turn around so you guys can see. It's so gorgeous. So all these lights, they have different colors. It's so pretty. Anyway, okay, so sorry, I digress. But let's get into the content. So you are ready to do your song. So in the recording process, there's 3 segments. First, there's pre-production, there's production, and there's post-production. So pre-production, that is where you prepare your song before you go into the studio. You make sure you know it. You make sure you know it to the point where you feel what you're singing, so that when you go in that studio, all you got to do is sing it. You're not you're not worried about the lyrics. You're not, because you really want to connect with that song. So also, if you want to meet with the producer before the session to discuss arrangements or anything, any questions you may have, then that's the time to do it in pre-production. So now that you got that out the way, it's time to record the song. So this is production. This is when you go in the studio and you're ready to record that song. So you're in the vocal booth. You sing from your heart, because the microphone picks up everything. It picks up your mistakes. It picks up your emotions. So that's why when you hear your favorite song and you connect with that song and it's so, emotional. I think we were talking about, do you guys know this song? It's an old song by Hale Melvin and the Blue Notes, I Miss You. Do you guys remember that song? So Teddy Pendergrass is on that song, and I'm telling you, you feel the emotion. And when the gentleman, I don't know who's talking, but he's talking about how he missed this woman, and he says something about they had a child together apparently, and he's like, I got a gig, I got a job. And then at the end of the part, he goes, I miss you. I swear I do. And then Teddy Pendergrass goes in and he's like, ah. That is emotional. Like, you feel that. Now I know there's plenty of songs, even like newer songs like Adele and Beyonce and all these newer artists, but it's that emotion, and that has to come out when you're performing in that booth. It's just you and your voice and your emotion, and it has to come out. So that's recording. And also I have for this too, set aside a separate recording session for mixing. And what mixing is when they mix your voice and the music together, they blend it, because that's going to be a whole, I know for me, usually when I record, that's a whole recording 3-hour session of the producer mixing that song, making sure the vocals the vocals are not higher than the music and that kind of thing. So that is, and also another point that I want to make when it comes to that recording session is when you're in a studio and let's say you record yourself and the music, and it sounds so great, everything is so loud and it's crisp and you're like, oh, that's so great. You go home, let's say, I know usually it takes me a couple of sessions, so I go home after that first session and I listen to it, and it doesn't sound anything like it sounded in the studio. And that's why it's important for you to listen to it outside of the studio in like your headphones or a smaller system, because then you can really hear what the mix sound like, because that's what it's going to sound like on the record. But for some reason in the studio with the monitors and the equipment they have, everything sounds so perfect and crisp. So make sure that you listen to it outside of the studio just to hear exactly what it sounds. So now we're gonna move into post-production, and that's when the producer does the final mix down. And what I mean by that is the equalizing of the levels, the vocals, the compression of all of the components of the song to kind of holds it together. And one point I want to make is a mastering producer told me, now the mastering is in post-production, that's coming up, but he said to make sure that you have a good mix, because if you don't have a good mix, it's nothing he can do in mastering. The mixing is the most important part of that of the song, because that's what's gonna make the sounds good. So mixing meaning the vocals and the music are even, the instrumentation is even. Have you ever heard, I don't know if you ever heard where a voice is louder than the music? It doesn't sound right. So in the final mix down, they make sure all the levels are right. They make sure the vocals have the right effects on it if you want effects, so that when you go, now we're moving into post-production, and that's when you get it mastered. Now some people don't master their music, but it's very important, because first of all, when you listen to your songs on the radio or or your CDs or your live streaming or whatever, it has that crisp sound, and that's what they do in mastering. Because in the mastering part of the whole process, they take that mix, that final mix, and they make the songs on each of the tracks even. So like when you listen to your CD straight through, no one song doesn't sound louder than the other. In mastering, they make sure it's all even. I also had a definition of mastering: a process of preparing and transferring the recorded audio final mix to a data device, and they call it the master. And that's what you're going to take to, or that's what you're going to give the manufacturing company to duplicate your CD. They duplicate it from the master. I'm going to give you an example. If you don't get it mastered, and let's say you give it to disc makers, which is a huge major manufacturer, when they copy from the unmastered copy, it's already going to be a denigrated sound, so it's not going to sound as good. But if they copy it from a master, it's going to sound the same as that master. And so that's another reason why you want to get it mastered. Now, I don't know if you ever heard something that's not mastered. You can tell because it doesn't sound professional. It really doesn't sound crisp. You know, there's some things sound louder than the other. In mastering, they fix all of that. And I have witnessed the difference between something that I have not mastered, and when they master it, you can really hear the difference. And that's what you hear on the radio, what you hear on on Spotify or whatever you listen to. Most people don't listen to CDs anymore, but you hear that crisp sound. That's what mastering does. So it's really important. So that's in post-production. So now, you're ready to, I think during this time, you can get your graphic designer and you can, get somebody to design your CD covers and your liner notes and what people are going to read when they look at your CD. So that's part of, getting all that ready. And if you don't know a graphic designer, I can recommend Fiverr.com. It's a site where people bid on prices, and you can get a good price. And I've heard really good things about it, like in terms of finding graphic designers, finding what do you call those assistants? God, you know what I'm talking about. PA. The assistants where virtual assistants. So any kind of services, Fiverr, Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com. You can also go online and find a graphic designer, but someone to design your CD. So once you get your graphics, your master, you send it to disc makers or another major manufacturing company, and you get it printed and you get it copied, and it's done. Now, I want to say that I consider this part one because we're in the show part. So everything that we're dealing with the show is really about presentation and presenting yourself and getting yourself ready. Now, when we get to the business part, there's another side to this because, you're going to want to market this. You're going to want to have a marketing plan. You're going to want to have a promotional plan so that people know about this and you can sell it. That's a whole different animal. And so I'm putting that part in the business part. So this is technically part one of releasing your music. So, thank you for the reactions. Thank you. Yes. So I hope that doesn't confuse you because it's kind of like part one. That's just like getting yourself in the studio, getting it done, getting the graphic. And I'm gonna tell you another reason why I'm saying this is because when I did my CD several years ago, I focused so much on this that I didn't focus on the other part of it, which is the promotion, which is the marketing, which is getting the word out, branding, getting the word out, so that once the CD was done, people were excited about it. Now that's a whole different show. That's why I wanted to put that separately, because that's the business side of it. But this is kind of like the show part. This is kind of like your presentation, your physical CD. This is the packaging. This is getting it done. And once so we'll talk about the other part of it later. But I wanted to just kind of stress this is from tip number 21 through 30. This is your original music. So I hope this was helpful to you guys. If you want to go back, now we will have a recap show, and I'll recap all of those tips from this section that leads up to this. But this is releasing your own music. And at the beginning of this section, I was telling you why it's important to release your music. It's important to release your music because this is your voice. This is your message to the world. And I believe that every singer has a message, and every singer should release their own music. So I hope that this was helpful. I'll do like a little bit of a recap because I know it went kind of fast. So just to give you a recap of what we went over today, this tip is the last tip of this section, which is releasing your own music. The name of this tip is Release Your Own Music, and we talked about the process of recording. We talked about the 3 segments of recording, which is pre-production, production, and post-production. And pre-production, it's all about just making sure the song is ready before you go in the studio. That means rehearsing it. That means, connecting to it so that when you go in the studio, all you have to do is just sing it. In production, we talked about recording that song, making sure it's performance ready so that you record from your heart, you sing it from your heart, because it's going to come out on the tape. Picks up everything. The recording picks up everything. It picks up your bad notes and it picks up your emotion. So you want to make sure that you're ready for that. Have a separate session for your mixing. That's a whole different thing. So once the song is recorded, you're going to want to have a really good mix, because it's important for the vocals and the music to all be in sync and the right levels, so that when you go into post-production, the song is exactly the way you want it when they master it. So final mix, once they mix it, he does the producer does a final mix where they equalize all the vocals and the music. They make sure everything is even, and they make sure everything is sound the way you want it. Listen to the song outside of the studio, because sometimes it sounds really great in the studio, with the equipment and the speakers, and everything is so loud. And you go home and you listen and you're like, that's not what it sounds like. So make sure you listen to it outside of the studio. Next, we're moving into post-production. So you're going to take that final mix to be mastered. And with the mastering, they just take the song to a whole different level. They make sure all of the songs are evenly distributed on the CD. They make sure they make sure the levels are even better. They give you that crisp radio sound, and this is what you're going to use to record to make copies for your copies, and it's going to sound fine when it's mastered. The copies are not going to be degraded. It's going to sound exactly the way the master is. You do your graphics for your cover, your liner notes, what you're going to put in the CD. You get it printed, and that's it in terms of the packaging side of it. And then now the business side we're going to go over later, which is marketing, which is how do you sell it, basically. So that's it. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope I didn't go too fast. Let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if it was clear. If you need me to go over anything else. Oh, hi, cousin. How are you, Tamika? Thanks for joining. This is Singing Tip. This is the last tip in the Release Your Own Music section, and we were going over the recording process. The 3 segments of the recording process: the pre-production, the production, and the post-production. So I hope that this was helpful to you all. I hope that, and if you want to hear all of the other tips that I did, go to BCM Sings on Instagram, click on the bio, and I archive all of the tips. Hi, Paris. Thanks for joining Singing Tips today. I archive all of the tips, so you can go back, and if there's anything you have a question about, it's on YouTube. So go to Benita Charles. On my YouTube channel, I have a playlist called Singing Tips. All of the tips are there, all of the videos. So, I hope this is helpful, guys. I'm really excited. We're going to be doing a recap show for this section, and the next section is image. So we're going to go all about your image. And once we get out of image, we will be going into the business side of the show business. So we're almost there. And I thank you for your patience. I thank you for listening. And if there's anything that you want me to cover that I haven't covered, let me know. And I appreciate you guys. So do anyone have any questions over what I went over today or anything in this section? Let me know. I'm here at the Brookfield Place in Lower Manhattan. Looks like they're going to start the light show again. So let's show you guys quickly. So they have this beautiful light show every 30 minutes. This is called Luminaires, and it is gorgeous. Yeah, they extended it because it was supposed to be over January 8th, and they extended it through January 29th. So this is going to be going on for another week or so. But it's really nice. Yeah, it's beautiful, right? So thank you guys for your attention, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'll see you next time on Singing Tips. And let me know if you have any questions. So thanks so much, and I will see you next week for another episode of Singing Tip. This is the end. This is the last tip for your original music section. So yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the hearts. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next time.